Well, we've had rain and cold, but it's a sloppy mess out there. But I have been thinking, I did quite a few videos on this Ukraine nonsense, and I kind of stopped doing them only because I kind of think there's no point at this stage. It isn't like you're gonna change people's minds. Either you listen to the nonsense that the mainstream media is telling you, or you look and you know better. Like that old saying. I think Mark Twain was credited with saying that it's easier to fool somebody than it is to convince them that they have been fooled. And I think that's very true. People have made up their minds about what's going on, and they will never admit to themselves that what they think is wrong. So you kind of just have to let it ride and let it play out, like I said in one video. But when I read in the comments on some of the videos that I watch, I'm actually amazed how just foolish people are, that they don't bother to look into these things. That's all right. Makes no difference. You can make all the racket you want. There's nothing to say is going to change anything. We're bound and determined, well, like Biden the one day was saying, that, there's going to be a new world order, and we're going to run it. Well, I don't want anything to do with the new world order, and a hell of a lot of people don't. But a lot of people are getting into this, somehow thinking this is a good idea. It's we've got a basic battle going on right now over the New World Order. And I want nothing to do with it. But like I say, it's gonna play out regardless. But it's funny, when you listen to people talking about, oh, poor Ukraine. I tell you, we don't really, and none of these people that are pushing arms into Ukraine give a damn about Ukraine. This would have never got started if they actually cared about Ukraine. It's just they're just a pawn, is all it is. But we just keep pumping in more and more. And it's funny, if you listen to the regular mainstream news, well, it gets very contradictory, but you would swear, Ukraine is just whomping them. That Zelensky, he's just a hell of a guy. Just beating back them Russians. And the opposite, complete opposite is true. But a whole lot of innocent people are going to die in the meantime. And there's going to be a lot of money spent on weapons that can never be paid for. It's silliness. And you're actually making countries line up. Like we're pressuring people all the time. Like Slovakia, they really didn't want to give up their S-300 missile system that they had. But we just kept cranking on them, putting more and more pressure. So finally they did. So they get in exchange Patriot missiles, which is our foot in the door. Because you can only get them from the U.S. You get them. They come in with a crew to run them because nobody else can run them. So we now have a presence in Slovakia. Not a good idea. The smart move would be, like Hungary, just stay the hell out of it. And now I think Slovakia was talking about turning over some of their old MiGs too. And it'll be just like with this missile system. Oh boy, this wonderful thing. It got blown up right away. They hauled it in there, set it up, boom, they took it out. I remember I was watching, this was a few days back, they had a whole trainload of armored vehicles that had come from Poland. And the Russians watched it all the way across Ukraine. When it got out to the east end, they waited until it got into the yard, the rail yard, to unload it. And then they just completely smashed it to nothing but scrap iron. I mean, their joke was, if they're going to haul it over here, let them haul it all the way across so that our scrap iron dealers don't have to go so far to pick it up. There's going to be a lot of scrap iron when this is done. And they were saying too, like all these Javelin missiles that we keep pushing in there at tremendous cost. Oh, aren't they wonderful? Well, Ukraine has misplaced quite a pile of them. Right now, I believe the Russians in Ukraine have more than anybody in the world. They have more Javelin missiles because we pushed them in there. And them Stingers, in fact, that's where they were trying to get those mysterious people that are trapped in that steel manufacturing plant in Mariupol. They were trying to get in there with helicopters to evacuate them. I don't know, you maybe have never even heard of this, but because if you don't really look, you won't know it, but there's an odd thing where, they've got them cornered. This will be over like in another day, it'll be the end of this. But they have that Azov battalion and a bunch of unknown foreign fighters. I'm sure it's French and German and Polish and these are all cornered in there, and they've been trying everything to get them out of there because there's a lot of people in there who should not have been involved at all. They were fighting, and it's going to be a disaster. So they've been really pushing, trying to get these people out of there. So they made runs with helicopters. Well, they shot down a couple of them helicopters right off the bat. Well, they let two of them land, and when they got up, then boom, took them out. Well, that's when they found out where some of these people were from, because there was like French uniforms and shit, that weren't supposed to be anywhere near there, weren't supposed to be in the fighting. Well, then they try to kind of claim that, well, maybe these Nazis are holding them hostage. They were leading, so that ain't gonna fly. But anyway, what they shot it down with was one of our Stinger missiles. Because I've talked about this before. You see where they'll come, and the Ukrainians have just abandoned piles and piles of the equipment that we sent over there, and the Russians just pick it up. It's just there for the taking. That's why I can never figure out. If you listen to the mainstream news, they always claim, oh my God, Russia's leaving tanks. They just abandon them, run out of fuel, and they walk away. And yet Ukraine is squawking that we're supposed to keep giving them tanks. You would think that they'd have more tanks than they know what to do with, but they don't. They got very few. It's a funny, it's really all propaganda, but I'm afraid a lot of people listen to this, and if you don't know what you're listening to, especially when you hear this, it'll be like a series of stills, and there'll be a robotic voice narrating it. That's just. So that's why I really, basically, I decided I wasn't going to really talk about that anymore, or just leave it alone. I know there's a lot of interest in it, but I feel that it is not my job to straighten people out on this. If they haven't been able to think for themselves, there's plenty of, there are independent journalists on the ground there talking to the people there. You can get the story, but if you don't really want to get the actual story, if you want to listen to the propaganda, that's your problem. That ain't my problem. So you can deal with that on your own. I mean, it's a horrible thing. It was bound to be a horrible thing from the start, but for some reason, we thought this was a good idea. To me, it's incredible that the Russians were patient for as long as they were. I mean, that they had to sit there and watch these people getting bombed constantly for 8 years. And nobody would do anything. Nobody would stop it. Well, finally they said they had to stop it. Honestly, I am impressed how patient the Russians are. But I think their patience is running out. Like, say, now when they're having these peace talks, it's a waste of time. And they finally realize it's just a waste of time. There's no point to even talking about it now. You're going to have to beat some sense into them. That's the only way it's going to work. Because every time, if Zelensky even hints about making some kind of an agreement, like the next day he'll come back, oh, no, because we got to him again. Because we want this, as long as there's a Ukrainian alive, we want to keep. It's a great way to get rid of all the neo-Nazis there, but there's a hell of a lot of civilians that are dying too that shouldn't be. There's a lot of dirty tricks going on. But I blame our government. That's the only one that's to blame here. That this didn't have to be. But Russia is doing what it has to do, and they're going to do it. There's no way around it, and I can't fault them. And it's going. The only thing, they spent a little more time up at Kiev, like I thought in the beginning. Why even bother with Kiev? But I mean, they did have to take out the military infrastructure that was at Kiev, up in that area, and they were already up there anyway, in Belarus and whatnot, So, yeah, I guess, and now they've got, they figure 70% of the Ukrainian army tied up protecting their precious Kiev. So, the Russians are free to take out the rest of that bunch down south. And I still, the only question I have, like I say, now the Russians are finally pissed off. They've had enough of this playing around. And they're just going to hit it hard. And, at first I thought, I had doubts whether they would go into Odessa, because that is a killer. But I think they're going to have to. And I think they're gonna, but the problem is that Odessa is really the only port that Ukraine will have at the moment, and of course Russia's got them blockaded in there, and they've taken out fuel dumps and whatnot there, but they haven't really made a push for it. But maybe when they're done in Mariupol here, when they finish up the rest of them Nazis and foreign fighters, which everybody is dying to find out what they got in there, because they're holed up in there, and like I said, they are trying everything to get out of there. They made a run with a ship in there trying to get them, and there's people in there that they don't want it known who they are. Well, I think we're going to find out. But it could have very far-reaching effects. What's in there, the people that are in there, that could be important. I mean, it could actually sway the French election. It's. But they're desperate. They want out of there. But I think they are screwed. That's what they tried to pull that whole thing now. Oh, somebody used chemical weapons. Nah, nonsense. You know, it's just, that is a pack of liars. But, of course, there are people. I mean, I know even the one day, on YouTube there was something, Save Ukraine, something came on, if I wanted to donate money to save Ukraine. Well, now, I don't normally flag videos, but I actually flagged that one as support terrorism. You know, because I have it the same thing on eBay the one day. Here, oh, do you want to make a donation to Ukraine? No way in hell do I want to make a donation to Ukraine. That's crazy. Geez, the amount of money that's flowing in there. And it isn't going, you know, you think, oh, for humanitarian aid. It isn't. There's no such thing. You know, the Russians have been bringing in humanitarian aid in the areas that they are. But the Ukrainians, they did the one day when Zelensky was out touring some people around, you know, some EU bigwig had come in. Well, of course, then they come with a truckload of bread and give the people bread, you know, and oh boy, you know, and then great Zelensky, you know, oh man. But you know damn well if he, well, like people have said, you know, he's always got these armed guards around him. I mean, his people that he works with are his producers, and you know that's where they make up all this crap, you know. But when he's out and about, he has armed guards with him that are those neo-Nazis, and there is always a question, are they guarding him, or are they just keeping a really close eye on him? You know, he's kind of a hostage there in a way too, because if he says anything wrong, like when he even starts hitting at some kind of a peace settlement, if he does anything like that, if he actually makes a move for that, they will take him out right now. I have no doubt. Of course, they'll make it look like the Russians took him out or some secret organization, but it'll be the Nazis. They'll take him out. Make him a martyr. They don't, you know, life is nothing to them. Like I say, a dead Ukrainian is much more valuable than a live one in the propaganda war, and that's what this is. So if you can get him a martyr, yeah, then they'll probably be asking me to kick in money to make a statue of Zelensky. But it'll end sometime. But I hate to see countries like those. Sweden and Finland are both thinking, well, maybe they should join NATO. I tell you, before you do that, like say Finland now, they've got experts at forensics. And when you've got these mass killings, they know what they're doing. Before they decide to join NATO, maybe go and take a look at some of these staged mass killings and draw your own conclusions, and then think about who you're getting in bed with. Because this is not above board. I loved it when the Ukrainians, they were going to do the investigation themselves when there's a lot of evidence that they were the ones who did the killing. Well, then the EU is going to come in and observe. Well, they ain't really doing anything. They're just cheering them on. It's a hell of a thing. But I noticed too, like say, if you look at videos, a lot of times there will be, like it'll list like 100 comments, but it'll only show like 50 comments, or even replies to comments. So they're really pulling crap off. You know, if it doesn't go with their narrative, they will take it down. And I'm sure it isn't the people who put the videos up. I'm sure, you know, because like there's that Patrick Lancaster. Lancaster? Yeah, I'll write the name in someplace in the description here. He's on the ground. He's lived there he's American, but he's lived there for a long time in the Donbass area. And he does fantastic on-the-ground reporting. But on his videos, I'll see a lot of times where a lot of the comments have been pulled and a lot of the replies to comments have been pulled. That's worrisome, that they go to that extreme. Well, I better knock this off and get up to 20 minutes. I'll upload this, but like I said, I have a lot to say on this stuff, but either you're preaching to the choir or you're preaching to a bunch of deaf people. If you aren't willing to listen, there's no point in it. And if you're willing to listen, you probably know what's going on. You probably understand what's going on. I see more and more signs that people are catching on to this dog and pony show that they're running over there. But we plow on. Our State Department and our news media is so embedded with them. And the same with some of the worst culprits are out of the UK. I don't know what they got involved in this, but they're really involved in this. They will say and do anything. Well, Germany does too, to a certain extent, but they're kind of backing off. Poland is bad news. But Poland has a scheme cooking here. There's a little piece of Russia up in the north of Poland that they'd really like to get their hands on. So I think they're looking at that in the long term. Kaliningrad. But I think that's very heavily fortified. Things would really have to go to hell before they get a chance at that, but I think they got their eyes on that. But no, I see like Germany, they started out not giving weapons, then they started giving a few weapons. Well, now they're going to rustle up a bunch of old Leopard 1 tanks. Some of this stuff is real old that they're digging out. It's like they're just cleaning out the closet. But they're going to get them. They're going to ship them over there. Well, in the first place, they aren't going to be able to run them. Second place, nobody makes ammunition for them. Well, I think they use them like in Brazil. They might have ammunition there, but nobody else. They're obsolete. So they've got very limited ammunition. Plus, they don't know how to run them. Plus, they aren't really in working condition. But they're going to patch them together, load them on a rail car, and they'll just make target practice for the Russians. I tell you, scrap iron, that's the business to be in. There's going to be a lot of that laying over there. But, like I say, they don't know how to run them. And the same with they keep pushing, we got to give them fighter planes that they can't possibly fly. The MiGs, they know how to fly. That's all they know how to fly. And they'd be dead in no time. That stuff has got a very short life over there. I mean, if it even gets into active service. And like I said, really, there's no place to land them. You can land them on a highway. Like when they shipped those, I saw that whole trainload of armor that got blown into scrap iron. They could have shot, as soon as they came into Ukraine, they could have taken it out. But the theory is they don't want to take out the rail line. If people are trying to evacuate on a train, you got to have that rail line there for them. So they left that open. So they waited, let it get all the way across the country, and then just blew it to hell. Which is exactly what they did, the same thing with those S-300 missiles. They waited, so they got all the way over the other side of the Ukraine. And as soon as they parked them, they were done. But yet you listen to the news, and boy, and I read in the comments, Yep, Ukraine is going to push them Russians right back to Moscow and burn Moscow down. That ain't going to happen. You know, eventually you're just going to run out of Ukrainians. You know, when you talk about genocide, we're actually we're doing a genocide on Ukraine. We are. We're putting them in a position where all they can do is die. Well, like I say, let it play out. Not a damn thing you can do. But at least when you hear that nonsense that they start talking, be aware of how much lying is going on. I am encouraged, though, that there is a lot of people that are catching on to this, that are seeing behind the screen kind of what's actually transpiring. And some people never will. You you still hear, oh, Assad was using chemical weapons on his own people. You know, and that was proven to be fabricated. But it's funny, you know, they can fabricate something like that, and people will believe it because they want to believe it, and no amount of proof can make them change their mind. You know, they're going to stick with that because they don't want to admit that they were wrong. They can't believe that their government would lie to you. Though, just the other day, the government was bragging, our government was bragging how they lied to us. Oh, aren't they tricky? You know, like about, oh, Russia's going to use chemical weapons. They admitted they made that up. They just made it up. You know, why not? Their theory was that if we had people believe in that, then the Russians wouldn't dare to do it. So they sold you that bill of goods, and you believed it. So now on this latest little thing about, oh, chemical weapons, and people jump on it. And they don't remember that 2 or 3 days ago, the government just admitted that they were lying about that. We'll see what happens. No good, though. I mean, there's no good that's going to come out of this. But like I say, it's a battle to keep the New World Order in check. And right now, the only ones pushing back on that are the Russians. So more power to them, because there's no good in that for any normal human being. So there's no good side in this, but at least I can see what the Russians are doing, and I can appreciate it. Because like Biden said, there's going to be a new world order, and we're going to run it. We can't run our own country, and we're going to try to run the whole world. You gotta love that.